Human Reproduction. Chapter 3, Ncert 12. Human Reproduction. It includes the male reproductive system, female reproductive system, gametogenesis, menstrual cycle, fertilization and implantation, pregnancy and embryonic development, parturition and lactation. So let's start the topic, let's start the chapter. That as you are aware, humans are sexually reproducing and viviparous. The reproductive events in human include the formation of gametes. We call the formation of gametes as gametogenesis. That means sperms in male and ovum in female. The transfer of sperms into the female genital tract is called insemination. Insemination. And the fission of male and female gametes is called fertilization, leading to the formation of zygote. This is excuse me. This is followed by the formation and development of the blastocyst and its attachment to the uterine wall. We call the attachment to the uterine wall as implantation. Embryonic development for 9 months, that we say gestation. Delivery of the baby is called parturition. You have learned that these reproductive events occur after puberty. There are remarkable differences between the reproductive events in the male and in the female. For example, sperm formation continues even in old men, but formation of ovum ceases in women around the age of 50 years. We call it as menopause. Let us examine the male and female reproductive systems in human. The male reproductive system. Male reproductive system located in the pelvis region. Male reproductive system is located in the pelvis region. It includes a pair of testes along with accessory ducts, glands and external genitalia. A pair of testes along with accessory ducts, glands and the external genitalia. The testes are studied outside the abdominal cavity. The testes are studied outside the testes are situated outside the abdominal cavity within a pouch called scrotum. The scrotum helps in maintaining the low temperature of the testes, which is 2 to 2.5 degrees centigrade lower than the normal internal body temperature, which is necessary for the spermatogenesis. That testes are situated outside the abdominal cavity within a pouch called scrotum. The scrotum helps in maintaining the low temperature of the testes, which is 2 to 2.5 degrees centigrade lower than the normal internal body temperature, necessary for spermatogenesis. In adults, each testis is oval in shape with a length of about 4 to 5 centimeter and the width of about 2 to 3 centimeter. The testis is covered by a dense covering. Each testis has about 250 compartments called testicular lobes. Then each lobule contains 1 to 3 highly coiled seminiferous tubules in which the sperms are produced. Then each seminiferous tubule is lined on inside by 2 types of cells called male germ cells. We call it as spermatogonia and serotoli cells. The male germ cells undergo meiotic divisions, finally leading to the sperm formation, while serotoli cells provide nutrition to the germ cell. The regions outside the seminiferous tubules are called interstitial cells. They contain small blood vessels, and interstitial cells are Leydig cells. The Leydig cells are going to synthesize and secrete the testicular hormones called androgens. Hormone from the Leydig cell is androgen. The other immunologically competitive cells are also present. The male sex accessory ducts include retitestis, vasa efferentia, epididymis, and vas deferens. The seminiferous tubules of the testes opens into the vasa efferentia through reti testes. The vasa efferentia leave the testes and open into the epididymis located along the posterior surface of each testis. The epididymis leads to vas deferens that ascends into the abdomen and loops over the urinary bladder. Epididymis leads to vas deferens, then that ascends the abdomen and loops over the urinary bladder. It receives a duct from seminal vesicle and opens into the urethra as the ejaculatory duct. This is going to be a sequence question. Like from seminiferous tubules to the reti testis to the vasa efferentia, then to the epididymis of caput carpus cauda epididymis, then they open into the vas deferens and they said the vas deferens that ascends to the abdomen and loops over the urinary bladder. Okay, then there it receives a duct from seminal vesicle and opens into the urethra as the ejaculatory duct. The total sequence will come like this. We need to frame the sequence as the notes here, like seminiferous tubules, reti testis, vasa efferentia, caput carpus cauda epididymis, then vas deferens, and vas deferens will join with the seminal vesicles. Then there it is going to form ejaculatory duct, that ejaculatory duct which opens into the urethra. This is the sequence total. These ducts store and transport the sperms from the testes to the outside through urethra. Ejaculatory ducts store and transport the sperm, that along with the ejaculatory duct, all the ducts store and transport the sperms from the testes to outside the outside through urethra. That means everything is a storage one. Seminiferous tubule onwards, reti testis, vasa efferentia, epididymis, vas deferens, ejaculatory duct, everything act as a storage. That longer duct for storage itself. Then the urethra originates from the urinary bladder and extends through the penis to its external opening called urethral meatus. Urethral meatus. Here little expansion required. That penis has two columns of corpora cavernosa and one column of corpus spongiosum. So our side urethra is passing through that corpus spongiosum. Urethra is passing from here. This is the corpus spongiosum and urethra is passing through here. Okay. So then ejaculation occurs through ejaculatory duct, urethral meatus, the opening we use it to say. The diagram is also going to be important one here. Let's take a look on the sectional view of the seminiferous tubules. That in seminiferous tubule, this is the tubule. There you can see the sperms are going to be produced over. In between them, you can see the Sertoli cells also. So these are all the seminiferous tubules. In the transverse section, you can see these are seminiferous tubules. Okay, so then in between the seminiferous tubule, the red portion, that which is given as red, so that is interstitial space. Let me change the color. This is interstitial space. So we said that interstitial space contain Leydig cells, which are going to be secrete a hormone called testosterone. Okay, so keep the labeling also in your mind. That means the same place you will get like this: A, then B, then C. You don't find these words in examination. So what are the ABC respectively? So that's why. So from which point they're that seen over, that also you have to check and verify the diagrammatic view. We have a special diagram workbook. And after the completion of the human physiology, we'll work with the diagram workbook also. Let's continue. The penis is the male external genitalia. It is made up of special tissue that helps in erection of the penis to facilitate insemination. The enlarged end of the penis and called glans penis is covered by a loose fold of skin we call foreskin, prepuce. The male accessory glands include paid seminal vesicles, a prostate gland. A means that's not paid. and paired bulbourethral gland. The male accessory glands include paired seminal vesicle, a prostate, and paired bulbourethral gland. Secretion of these glands constitute the seminal plasma, which is rich in fructose, calcium, and certain enzymes. The secretions of the bulbourethral glands also help in the lubrication of the penis. That's all about the male reproductive system. Next, the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system. The female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries along with a pair of oviduct, uterus, cervix, vagina, and external genitalia located in pelvic region. Then these parts of the system along with a pair of the mammary glands are integrated structurally and functionally to support the process of ovulation, fertilization, pregnancy, birth, and child care. The female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries along with a pair of oviduct, uterus, cervix, vagina, and the external genitalia located in pelvic region. These parts of the system along with a pair of the mammary glands are integrated structurally and functionally to support the process of ovulation, fertilization, pregnancy, birth, and child care. Ovaries are the primary female sex organ to be remembered that produce the female gamete called ovum and several steroid hormones, ovarian hormones. The ovaries are located one on each side of the lower abdomen. Location to be remembered, lower abdomen. Each ovary is about 2 to 4 centimeter in length and is connected to the pelvic wall and uterus by ligaments. Each ovary is about 2 to 4 centimeter in length, is connected to the pelvic wall and uterus by ligaments. That we say that as mesoovarium, mesosalpinx, and mesometrium. Each ovary is covered by a thin epithelium which encloses the ovarian stroma. Each ovary is covered by a thin epithelium which encloses the ovarian stroma. The stroma is divided into two zones, a peripheral cortex and inner medulla. The stroma, the ovarian stroma, include peripheral cortex and inner medulla. Here it is the diagram. That the diagram as a question. We get diagram as a question. That means here it is cervix, the rectum. No need to practice, but practice of labeling is very important. Vagina, then anus, so uterus. This is urinary bladder. Okay, so then pubic symphysis, that area, that location they are showing. Urethra, this is urethra. And the clitoris, a rod-like structure, homologous to the penis of male. Then the vaginal orifice, labia minora, labia majora. So then these are all the label, the issues of the female reproductive system here. So need to focus in the form of diagrams. Okay. So then let's continue. The oviducts, which are called fallopian tubes, uterus and vagina, consist of the female accessory ducts. Each fallopian tube is about 10 to 12 centimeter long and extends from the periphery of each ovary to the uterus. The part closer to the ovary is the funnel-shaped infundibulum. This is the infundibulum. The edges of the infundibulum possess the finger-like projection, the finger-like projections called fimbriae. The finger-like projections are called fimbriae. Then which the fimbriae help in the collection of ovum after ovulation, because after ovulation the secondary oocyte ovum will be released into the peritoneal cavity. So from there they have to collect the fimbriated funnel. The infundibulum leads to a wider part of the oviduct which is called ampulla. The last part of the oviduct is isthmus, that which has a narrow lumen and it joins the uterus. The last part of the oviduct is isthmus, has a narrow lumen and it joins the uterus. Okay, so uterus is a single and it is also called womb. It's going to be a question. Uterus is single and it is also called womb. The shape of the uterus is like inverted pear. It is supported by ligaments attached to the pelvic wall. The uterus, that's what we say, the technically called mesometrium. Uterus opens into the vagina through a narrow cervix. Uterus opens into the vagina through narrow cervix. The cavity of the cervix is called cervical canal, which along with vagina, it forms the birth canal. So birth canal include cervical canal and also vagina, vaginal canal and cervical canal. So that remember here, the birth canal. So need to focus here, the birth canal. The birth canal, the cavity of the cervix is called cervical canal, which along with the vagina, it forms the birth canal through which the baby comes out after gestation. The wall of the uterus has three layers of tissue. The external thin membranous perimetrium, middle thick layer of smooth muscle, that myometrium, and inner glandular layer called endometrium that lines the uterine cavity. The properties: thin membranous perimetrium, thick layer of smooth muscle myometrium, glandular layer called endometrium that lines the uterine cavity. The endometrium undergoes cyclical changes. Endometrium undergoes cyclical changes during menstrual cycle, while the myometrium exhibits strong contraction during delivery of the baby. Myometrium exhibits strong contraction during delivery of the baby. Then the female external genitalia include mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymen, and clitoris. That was shown already to you in the form of diagram. The mons pubis is a cushion of fatty tissue covered by skin and pubic hair. So it will be in the form of question. The cushion of fatty tissue covered by skin and pubic hair is mons pubis. Labia majora are fleshy folds of tissue which extend down from the mons pubis and surround the vaginal opening. So here is going to be the question. The fleshy folds of tissue which extend down from the mons pubis and surround the vaginal opening is. That means you need to answer labia majora. Okay. Next, the labia minora are paired folds of tissue under the labia majora. The paired folds of the tissue which are present under the labia majora are. That we need to answer labia minora. So that means the form of questions we are talking here. If you make notes like that, will be helpful. The opening of the vagina is often covered by partially by a membrane. So the partial membrane which covers the opening of the vagina is called the hymen. Okay. Then the clitoris is a tiny finger-like structure which lies at the upper junction of the two labia minora above the urethral opening. Here is the question. The tiny finger-like structure which lies at the upper junction of the two labia minora above the urethral opening is clitoris. Yes, the hymen is often torn during the first coitus. That's what he say, intercourse. That, however, it can also be broken by a sudden fall or jolt. That possibilities. Insertion of a vaginal tampon. Active participation in some sports like horseback riding, the cycling. In some women, the hymen persists even after coitus. In fact, the presence or absence of hymen is not a reliable indicator of virginity or sexual experience. So let's take a look back here again here for questions. So that if we make questions like this, will be helpful. We have questions for mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, and hymen and clitoris. Okay, so a cushion of fatty tissue covered by skin and pubic hair. Likewise, the cushion of fatty tissue covered by skin and pubic hair, mons pubis. The fleshy folds of the tissue which extend down from the mons pubis and surround the vaginal opening, labia majora. The paired folds of tissue under the labia majora are labia minora. Opening of the vagina is often covered partially by a membrane, that hymen, a tiny finger-like structure which lies at the upper junction of the two labia minora above the urethral opening, that is clitoris. Okay, so that to be remembered over that in that area, the location-wise questions and math followings may expect. Okay, so then here is again the diagram, that sequence and the diagram here, the fat, livid, mammary lobe. The question will come from here, the sequence, that mammary lobe onwards. The mammary lobe which contain mammary alveolus, and all the alveolus is going to open into mammary duct, and all the ducts are opens into the ampulla. Ampulla opens into the lactiferous duct, it finally opens out nipple. So just need to take care of that sequence question as well as the diagrammatic question is as usual. Then a functional mammary gland is characteristic of all female mammals. The mammary glands are the paired structures we call breasts that contain glandular tissue and a variable amount of fat. The glandular tissue of each breast is divided into mammary lobes containing clusters of cells called alveoli. The cells of alveoli secrete milk. The cells of alveoli secrete milk, which is stored in the cavities of alveoli. They secrete and they store. Alveoli secrete, alveoli store. Alveoli opens into, here onward the sequence question we have. Alveoli opens into mammary tubules. The tubules of each lobe join to form a mammary duct. The mammary duct. Several mammary ducts join to form a wider mammary ampulla, which is connected to lactiferous duct, through which the milk is sucked out. So this is a sequence question. Need to focus here for sequence. Let's continue with the gametogenesis. The primary sex organs. The testes in the male and the ovaries in the female produce gametes, that means sperm and ovum, respectively. By the process called gametogenesis in testes, the immature male germ cells, we call spermatogonia, produce sperms by spermatogenesis that begins at puberty. The spermatogonia, the singular we call spermatogonium, present on the inside wall of the seminiferous tubule, multiply by mitotic division. Spermatogonia multiply by mitotic division. Every single word is going to be questioned here. And increase in numbers. Each spermatogonium is diploid. This is the question. And contain 46 chromosomes. The sum of the spermatogonia called primary spermatocytes. So we can expect these are also diploid. Periodically undergo meiosis. Who undergo meiosis? Who undergo meiosis? Primary spermatocyte undergo meiosis. A primary spermatocyte completes the first meiotic division, then leading to the formation of two equal haploid cells called secondary spermatocyte. So this is haploid. Secondary spermatocyte is haploid, which have only 23 chromosomes each. The secondary spermatocytes undergo second meiotic division. First meiotic division performed by primary spermatocyte. Second meiotic division performed by that secondary spermatocyte. Okay, then the produce four equal haploid spermatid. For equal haploid spermatid. So this is the area with the pool of questions The various questions are there from here in this area. Like from primary spermatocyte after meiosis 1, it produced 2 secondary spermatocytes. Secondary spermatocyte after meiosis 2, that which form the 4 equal haploid spermatids. That what would be the number of chromosomes in a spermatid? So definitely we can say haploid. The spermatids are transformed into spermatozoa by the process called spermiogenesis. So what is spermiogenesis? The transformation of the spermatozoa, that the spermatid into spermatozoa, is called spermiogenesis. After spermiogenesis, sperm heads become embedded in the Sertoli cells. There you can see here, this is the area. You can see that in the box I am showing here, this is the area. The sperms are embedded in the Sertoli cells and are finally released from the seminiferous tubules by a process called spermiation. So to be remembered, spermatogenesis, spermiogenesis, and spermiation. These three are going to be the questions here. Spermatogenesis is the total process, production of sperms. Particularly talking about spermiogenesis, the spermatid, the transformation of the spermatid into the spermatozoa. Release of sperms from here, from where? From the Sertoli cells. We call spermiation. The spermatogenesis starts at the age of puberty due to significant increase in the secretion of gonadotropin releasing hormone. Each and every this part and sentences are exposed and expanded in the previous classes. So just why this is just reading, showing how NCRT is given. This, if you recall, is a hypothalamic hormone. GnRH is a hypothalamic hormone. The increased levels of GnRH then acts on the anterior pituitary gland and stimulate the secretion of two gonadotropins like luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Then LH, luteinizing hormone, acts on the Leydig cells and stimulates the synthesis and secretion of androgens. Okay, so let's talk about this. LH acts on Leydig cell for what? Secretion of androgens. Androgens in turn stimulate the process of spermatogenesis. That means it will come under the account of LH itself. Okay, so then LH acts on Leydig cell and stimulate the synthesis of secretion of androgen. Androgen in turn stimulate the process of spermatogenesis. So that indirect act of LH we have to see. Then what is the function of FSH? FSH acts on the Sertoli cells and stimulate the secretion of some factors which help in the process of spermiogenesis. So this credit goes to FSH. What do you say? That FSH spermiogenesis, it was given like that. It should just follow. And according to NCRT, the question came, so that you need to check these two issues here. Like that LH acts on Leydig cell, that makes the production of androgen, and androgens in turn in spermatogenesis. So the sole responsibility of the spermatogenesis for LH. Okay. So FSH acts on the Sertoli cells. FSH acts on Sertoli cells and stimulate the secretion of some factors which help in the process of spermiogenesis. Okay, spermiogenesis. Let us examine the structure of a sperm. It is a microscopic structure composed of head, neck, middle piece, and a tail. A plasma membrane envelops the whole body of a sperm. The sperm head contains elongated haploid nucleus. From here onwards, the questions have started. That head contains elongated haploid nucleus. Anterior portion of which a head is covered by a cap-like structure called acrosome. Haploid nucleus and acrosome belongs to head. The acrosome is filled with enzymes that help in the fertilization of the ovum. Middle piece contain numerous mitochondria which produce energy for the movement of tail, that facilitate the sperm motility and essential for fertilization. Okay, so the middle piece possesses numerous mitochondria. That to be remembered. That mitochondria produce energy for the movement of tail that facilitate the sperm motility and essential for fertilization. The human male ejaculate 200 to 300 millions of sperms during coitus, of which for normal fertility, at least the 60% of the sperms. Here we have that application 200 to 300 millions, at least 60%. So that means it is about 100 to 180. Most of that 60% is 120 to 180 million. What we must have normal shape and size. Out of 200 to 300 million, the 60%, that means 120 to 180 million, that what is that 120 to 180, that you need to focus there, normal shape and size. Then at least 40% of them, that means talking about 48 to 72 million, 40 among 120. So that 40% of them, what is 40% then? Must show vigorous motility. So finally, if it is asked over that how many must show vigorous motility, that means 48 to that 72. Normal shape and size 120 to 180 million. So that kind of applications will come here. The sperms are released from the seminiferous tubule, are transported by that accessory ducts, that secretions of epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicle, and prostate are essential for the maturation and motility of the sperms. Everyone is participating. The seminal plasma along with the sperms constitute the semen. This is a definition. Seminal plasma plus sperms. We say seminal plasma plus sperms is called semen. Okay. Then the functions of the male accessory ducts and glands are maintained by the testicular hormones called androgens. The process of formation of mature female gamete is called oogenesis, which is markedly different from spermatogenesis. Oogenesis is initiated during the embryonic development stage when a couple of million gamete mother cells, oogonia, are formed within each fetal ovary. Each fetal ovary is having couple of million, that means 2 million we have to talk about. Then no more oogonia are formed added after birth. This is very important to be remembered. These cells start division and enter into prophase 1 of the meiotic division and get temporarily arrested at that stage called primary oocyte. So that defining primary oocyte here, that the cells start that division and enter into the prophase 1 of the meiotic division and get temporarily arrested at the stage called primary oocyte. Each primary oocyte then gets surrounded by a layer of granulosa cells and is called primary follicle. The definition, each primary oocyte then gets surrounded by a layer of granulosa cells is called primary follicle. A large number of these follicle degenerate during the phase from birth to puberty. So that means a couple of million in each ovary. That the time when the girl is there in mother uterus, the till puberty, how many will remain in that in each ovary? 60,000 to 80,000. 60,000 to 80,000 primary follicle are left in each ovary. The primary follicle gets surrounded by more layers of granulosa cell and a new theca are called secondary follicle. Recognition for secondary follicle is given here. The granulosa cells containing, we say primary oocyte. More granulosa cells and theca, they termed it as secondary follicle. Okay, so we get in the form of the following, that granulosa cells layer, primary oocyte. More granulosa cells and new theca and are called secondary follicle. The secondary follicle soon transform into tertiary follicle, which is characterized by the fluid-filled cavity called antrum. So, according to this, antrum cavity is present only in the tertiary follicle. The theca layer is organized into inner theca interna and outer theca externa. It is important to draw your attention that it is at the stage that primary oocyte within the tertiary follicle grow in size and completes its first meiotic division. It is an unequal division resulting in the formation of a large haploid secondary oocyte and a tiny first polar body. Okay, so focus on the properties here. Let me say once again, primary follicle containing granulosa cell. More granulosa cells plus new theca, that is secondary follicle. Then how do you recognize the tertiary follicle then? Antrum cavity and the theca divided into externa and interna, theca externa and theca interna. And that one more issue, that secondary oocyte, primary oocyte which is there inside will complete the meiosis 1 and enters into the meiosis 2 and metaphase 2, and now it is called secondary oocyte. That we say tertiary follicle. So that means here we need to make some notes. Property of primary oocyte, property of secondary oocyte, and the property of primary follicle, secondary follicle, and tertiary follicle. The properties to be make as a notes. So the direct question may possible. Okay. So then the secondary oocyte retains bulk of the nutrient-rich cytoplasm of the primary oocyte. Can you think of any advantage for this? Yes, there is an advantage. That means when fertilization process is completed in the fallopian tube, till this secondary oocyte will go and make implantation in the mother uterus, till the time some development is going on, 2, 4, 8, 16, likewise 32 marula. So till the time for the development, this yolk substance will be helpful for the nourishment. Till before mother provide nourishment, this short period that is nourishment can be provided by this bulk of the nutrient-rich cytoplasm, which is taken by the secondary oocyte from the primary oocyte. Does the first polar body born out of the first meiotic division divide further or degenerate? So we have one more question here. Does the first polar body born out of first meiotic division, divide further or degenerate? That actually the record says that there is no evidence that that divides. But technically, when we are talking about this, if they divide, that is going to form what it can form. It can form a polar body again, isn't it? So that based on the general issues of the meiosis, if you say that if it form, that it can form the polar body. Whatever the question asked in that area, so about this, the first polar body. Okay, the first polar body. So let me erase this. Not going. Wait. No matter actually after the primary oocyte, when it goes to the division and it forms that polar body, the first polar body and secondary oocyte. Whether it divides or not, no matter. If it all divides, that may form two polar bodies again. But our text showing that the first polar body is not having any division. That will be eliminated, that will be degenerated. Okay. So whatever the question they asked there, and for that question we have answer in the chart. Okay. So then let's continue here. Let's continue. First meiotic division is over, which form the first polar body, and the first polar body is going to be degenerate. That we need to answer. So that at present we are not very certain about this. Okay, that's what I said. At present we are not very certain about this. For what? Does the first polar body born out of first meiotic division divide further or degenerate? So at present, we are not very certain about this. We don't have a complete idea on that. The tertiary follicle further changes into mature follicle or Graafian follicle. The tertiary follicle further changes into mature follicle or Graafian follicle. The secondary oocyte forms a new membrane called zona pellucida surrounding it. The Graafian follicle now ruptures to release the secondary oocyte from the ovary by the process called ovulation. Can you identify the major differences between spermatogenesis and oogenesis? So that was given here in the form of diagrammatic representation. Whereas if you see the diagram, there you can understand after meiotic division, that spermatogonia is going for mitotic differentiation, primary spermatocyte. After meiotic division, finally you can see here the 4 sperms are formed. General meiotic division gives 4 cells and all the 4 useful sperms it became here in case of male. But in case of female, have a controversial answer about first polar body, whether it divides or not, we don't know. And that ovum is formed and second polar body is also not useful. So that means after meiosis, only one useful the gamete will come here, only one. Here it is, the 4 sperms will come. Okay. Then it is going to be happen immediately. That is one more difference. Immediately. That means primary spermatocyte when starts division, first meiotic division, that results secondary spermatocyte, and second meiotic division that makes spermatids, and finally spermatozoa. Okay. So then, what about here? What about here? Oogonia. They're asking about the differences we need to go through. Oogonia, that mitotic differentiation form the primary oocyte. This meiosis 1 prophase 1, this stage will be seen from the birth of child to the till the puberty. Okay, so then that form the secondary oocyte at puberty age. Then for the completion of the meiosis 2 requires sperm penetration that we discussed in the earlier classes. This is just reading of the textbook, just highlighting the issues of the textbook here. That's why we are not going for explanation. Now let's make a look on the menstrual cycle. The reproductive cycle in the female primates like monkeys, apes, and human beings is called menstrual cycle. The first menstruation begins at puberty and it is called menarche. And in human females, the menstruation is repeated at an average interval of about 28 to 29 days. And the cycle of events starting from one menstruation till the next one is called menstrual cycle. Then one ovum is released during ovulation during the middle of each menstrual cycle. So this diagram is very important that we need to see each and every event of the diagram. We need to follow through to write in examination. The total picture may come in examination. Then the major events of the menstrual cycle are shown in figure 3.9, which is very, very important. The cycle starts with the menstrual phase. The cycle starts with the menstrual phase. The properties need to make a note. When menstrual flow occurs, it lasts for 3 to 5 days. Menstrual phase for 3 to 5 days. Menstrual flow results due to breakdown of the endometrial lining of the uterus and its blood vessel, which forms a liquid that comes out through vagina. The menstruation only occurs if the released ovum is not fertilized. Menstruation only occurs if the released ovum is not fertilized. Lack of menstruation may be indicative of pregnancy. However, it may also be caused due to some other underlying causes like stress, poor health, likewise. The menstrual phase is followed by the second phase. What is it? Follicular phase. Menstrual phase followed by follicular phase. This is number 1 and this is number 2. During this phase, the primary follicles in the ovary grow to become a fully mature Graafian follicle, and simultaneously the endometrium of uterus regenerates through proliferation. These changes in the ovary and the uterus are induced by the changes in the levels of pituitary and ovarian hormones, which are shown in the diagram 3.9. The secretion of gonadotropins, the secretions of gonadotropins LH and FSH increases gradually during the follicular phase. This is going to be a bigger question, the follicular phase, and stimulates the follicular development as well as the secretion of estrogens by the growing follicle. The both LH and FSH attain peak level in the middle of the cycle. This is again about 14th day, the bigger question. The rapid secretion of LH leading to its maximum level during the mid-cycle called LH surge induces rupture of Graafian follicle and thereby the release of ovum, we say ovulation. The ovulation or ovulatory phase is followed by luteal phase, during which the remaining parts of the Graafian follicle transforms as the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes large amount of progesterone, which is essential for the maintenance of endometrium. Such an endometrium is necessary for implantation of the fertilized ovum and other events of pregnancy. During pregnancy, all events of the menstrual cycle stop and there is no menstruation. In the absence of fertilization, the corpus luteum degenerates. This causes the disintegration of the endometrium leading into menstruation, marking a new cycle. In human being, menstrual cycle ceases around 50 years of age. That is termed as menopause. Cyclic menstruation is an indicator of normal reproductive phase. It extends between the menarche and beginning and ending, menarche and menopause. Okay, that fertilization and implantation process, fertilization and implantation. During copulation, the coitus semen is released by the penis into the vagina. We call it as insemination. The motile sperms swim rapidly, pass through the cervix, enter into the uterus, and finally reach the ampullary region of the fallopian tube. The ovum release, here it is, the ovum released by the ovary is also transported by ampullary region where fertilization takes place. The fertilization can only occur if the ovum and sperms are transported simultaneously into the ampullary region. This is the reason why not all copulation lead to fertilization and pregnancy. Fertilization and pregnancy. Let's continue. The, the ovum released by the ovary is also transported to the ampullary region where fertilization takes place. Fertilization can only occur if the ovum and sperms are transported simultaneously to the ampullary region. This is the reason why not all copulations lead to fertilization and pregnancy. The process of fission of a sperm within an ovum is called the fertilization. During fertilization, a sperm comes in contact with the zona pellucida layer of the ovum. Here it is again. During fertilization, a sperm comes in contact with the zona pellucida layer of the ovum and induces the changes in the membrane that block the entry of additional sperms. Thus, it ensures that only one sperm can fertilize an ovum. The secretions of the acrosome help the sperm enter into the cytoplasm of the ovum through the zona pellucida. And here it is, the cells of the corona radiata. Here also, the very famous and regular question here that you see, this is zona pellucida. Okay, then outer whatever see that is corona radiata, granulosa cells of corona radiata, which are come in contact each other by hyaluronic acid, not given up to the mark in text. And the plasma membrane. This induces the completion of the meiotic division of the secondary oocyte. The second meiotic division is also unequal and results in the formation of second polar body and a haploid ovum. So by the penetration of sperm only, the meiosis II will be completed over. Soon the haploid nucleus of the sperm and that of the ovum fuse together to form a diploid zygote. The how many chromosomes will be there in the zygote? That means 23 pairs of chromosomes are present in the zygote. One has to remember that the sex of the baby has been decided at this stage itself. Let us see how. As you know, the chromosome pattern in the human females is XX and that in the male is XY. Therefore, all the haploid gametes produced by the female have the sex chromosome X, whereas the male gametes, the sperms, the sex chromosome could be either X or Y. Hence, the 50% of sperms carry X chromosome and other 50% of the carry Y chromosome. After fission, the male and female gametes, the zygote would carry either XX female or XY male, depending on whether the sperm carrying X or Y fertilized the ovum. The zygote carrying XX would develop into female and baby, and XY would form a male. You will learn more about this chromosomal pattern and sex determination in chapter 5, Principles of Inheritance and Variation. That is why scientifically it is correct to say that sex of the baby is determined by the father and not by the mother. The mitotic division starts at the zygote, moves through the isthmus of the oviduct called cleavage towards the uterus and form 2, 4, 8, 16 daughter cells called blastomeres. Then here it is, the embryo with 8 to 16 blastomeres. The embryo with 8 to 16 blastomeres is called marula. Very regular question. That embryo with 8 to 16 blastomeres is called marula. And diagram is going to be the question again. Here it is. You need to take care of these particular. That fertilization B, that secondary oocyte waiting in the fallopian tube is A, and fertilization sperm entering inside 2-cell stage and 4-cell stage. That marula, as you have to make application here also. This is the ampulla ischemic junction. Fertilization occurs in here in the B, fallopian tube, ampulla ischemic junction, ampullary region. Then C, the cells are dividing 2, 4, 8. That they are dropping into the uterine cavity. That we need to remember. Till E, marula is also there in the fallopian tube, oviduct, we say. Okay, then after it is dropping, F is dropping. F means that nearly we are coming to the blastocyst. Okay, so finally G we can say exact blastocyst. In H, implantation. Okay, so that will be shown like that only. In that place they'll put A, B, C, D, that all the last questions. Okay, so the morula continues to divide and transform into blastocyst as it moves further into the uterus. The blastomeres in the blastocyst are arranged into an outer layer called trophoblast, an inner group of cells attached to the trophoblast called inner cell mass. The trophoblast layer then gets attached to the endometrium and the inner cell mass gets differentiated as a embryo. Inner cell mass gets differentiated as the embryo. The trophoblast layer then gets attached to the endometrium and the inner cell mass gets differentiated as embryo. After the attachment, the uterine walls divide rapidly and covers the blastocyst. As a result, the blastocyst becomes embedded in the endometrium of the uterus. We call this process as implantation process, which leads to the pregnancy. The pregnancy and embryonic development. After implantation, the finger-like projections appear on the trophoblast called chorionic villi. That called chorionic villi, which are surrounded by uterine tissue and maternal blood. The chorionic villi and uterine tissue become interdigitated with each other and jointly form a structural and functional unit between the developing embryo, fetus, and maternal body is called placenta. Is called placenta. The placenta facilitates the supply of oxygen and nutrients to the embryo and also removal of carbon dioxide and excretory waste material produced by the embryo. The placenta is connected to the embryo through an umbilical cord. The placenta is connected to the embryo through an umbilical cord, which helps in the transport of substances to and from the embryo. Placenta also acts as an endocrine tissue and produces several hormones like human chorionic gonadotropin, human placental lactogen, estrogen, and progesterone. The placenta, as an endocrine tissue, produces human chorionic gonadotropin, human placental lactogen, estrogen, progesterone. In the later phase of pregnancy, a hormone called relaxin is also secreted by the ovary. Ovary hormone called relaxin is also secreted by ovary. Okay, so let us remember that HCG, HPL, and relaxin are produced in women only during pregnancy. HCG, HPL, and relaxin. These three are going to be produced in women only during pregnancy. In addition, during pregnancy, the levels of the other hormones like estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, prolactin, thyroxine are increased several folds in the maternal blood. Increased production of these hormones is essential for supporting the fetal growth. Estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, prolactin, thyroxine are increased several folds in the maternal blood. Increased production of these hormones is essential for supporting the fetal growth. Metabolic changes in the mother and maintenance of pregnancy. Immediately after implantation, the inner cell mass, embryo, differentiates into an outer layer called ectoderm and inner layer called endoderm. A mesoderm soon appears between the ectoderm and endoderm. These three layers gives rise to all tissues in adults. It needs to be mentioned here that the inner cell mass contains certain cells called stem cells which have the potency to give rise to all the other tissues and organs. What are the major features of embryonic development at various months of pregnancy? The human pregnancy lasts 9 months. Do you know for how many months pregnancy lasts in dogs, elephant, cats? Find out. In human being, after 1 month of pregnancy, the embryo's heart is formed. That 1 month of pregnancy, the embryo's heart is formed. The first sign of growing fetus may be noticed by listening to the heart sound carefully through the stethoscope, which is happened in 1 month, first month itself. By the end of the 2nd month of pregnancy, that fetus develops limbs and digits. That by the end of 12 weeks, that means first trimester, most of the major organ systems are formed like limbs and external genital organs are well developed. Okay, then the first movements of the fetus and appearance of the hair on the head usually observed during the 5th month. So by the end of about 24 weeks, end of 2nd trimester, the body is covered with the fine hair, eyelids separate, eyelashes are formed. So by the end of 9 months of pregnancy, the fetus is fully developed and it is ready for delivery. So very, very important paragraph to be noticed over that human pregnancy lasts for 9 months, and in human being, after 1 month of pregnancy, embryo's heart is formed. The first sign of growing fetus may be noticed by listening to the heart sound carefully through the stethoscope. By the end of 2nd month of pregnancy, fetus develop limbs and digits. By the end of 12 weeks, the limbs and external genital organs are well developed. Then by the first movements of the fetus and appearance of the hair and the head are usually observed during 5th month. Then 6th month, by the end of about 24 weeks, that means second trimester, that means 6th month, the body is covered with fine hair, eyelids separate, and eyelashes are formed. We'll get as math the following from here. So finally, we come through parturition and lactation. The average duration of the human pregnancy is about 9 months, which is called the gestation period. The vigorous contraction of the uterus at the end of pregnancy causes expulsion and delivery of the fetus. This process of delivery of the fetus is called parturition. The process of the delivery of the fetus is called parturition. Parturition is induced by a complex neuroendocrine mechanism. A complex neuroendocrine mechanism. The signals for the parturition originate from the fully developed fetus and the placenta, which induce mild uterine contractions called fetal ejection reflex. This triggers the release of oxytocin from the maternal pituitary from the mother. Oxytocin acts on uterine muscles and causes stronger uterine contraction. This leads to the expulsion of the baby out of the uterus through the birth canal, parturition. Soon after the infant is delivered, the placenta is also expelled out of the uterus. What do you think? The doctors inject that induce the delivery? That means oxytocin. That makes the mammary glands of the female undergo differentiation during pregnancy and starts producing milk towards the end of the pregnancy by a process called lactation. This helps the mother in feeding of the newborn. The milk produced during initial few days of lactation is called colostrum, which contain several antibodies absolutely essential to develop the resistance for the newborn babies. The breastfeeding during the initial period of infant growth is recommended by the doctors for bringing up a healthy baby. Okay. So that's all about the human reproduction. So need to focus that primary areas of that means whatever highlighted here, whatever I underlined, so that areas we need to focus. Okay. So that answering the questions from NCRT is also make us to be much better that in human reproduction. More applications will come, but need to think of the direct sentences when it comes, you need to answer immediately. That means we need to be in touch with NCRT textbook continuously. So reading NCRT textbook will make us to answer that some sort of questions to come directly from NCRT textbook, but we are not going to say that is suggestible only NCRT. That means we have some applications. So that's why I suggest you to go for the expanded classes that we run on the particular NCRT textbook that on human reproduction. But the primary importance, the first importance for that NCRT sentences on human reproduction, which you are able to answer 50 to 60% of questions here.